ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम् समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्. So the analogy which we were seeing yesterday was in verse 65. This section is about the importance of direct experience and not just the intellectual comprehension. So different analogies were given. One was that the deceased person will not be able to will not be cured by just repeating the name of the medicine. One has to actually consume it. Then it was said that without withdrawing the mind from whatever is seen and without steadily contemplating on the self, simply saying Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, a person will not get liberated. Then the next analogy was about the king. One has to eliminate the enemies and bring the land under one's control. Then one becomes the king. And the beauty there is, then one doesn't even have to proclaim, I am the king. Automatically, people will recognize that person as the king. And the last analogy we saw was about the treasure. That the treasure which is hidden in the earth, one has to dig deep, remove all the obstacles and the stones and the mud, etc. And then the treasure reveals. So, Bahya Khananam, Antar Mananam. Inside one has to do the same thing in the inner journey. The treasure is there, covered by what? Maya Karya. Maya Karya is Mala Vikshepa Avarana. 3. 6 impurities, wandering of the mind, ignorance. So though it is our own nature, it is covered. I don't experience it right now because it's covered. So through the declaration of the wise people, one goes to the teacher, listens to the truth, reflects, contemplates, and realizes the purest self which is free from any impurity. Just like the treasure is only covered by the impurity. The mud, dirt, etc. doesn't dirty the treasure. In the same way, the impurities of the mind, body, intellect, they don't affect the self at all. The self remains pure. Swam amalam, it is said here. And that's the method to realize, not by just some skepticism or false logic. So he concludes this whole section about from self-effort onwards. He spoke so many things to bring to the disciples understanding the importance of self-effort, the importance of self-knowledge, and then the importance of the direct experience. So he says, 66th verse, Tasmat sarva prayatnena bhava bandha vimuktaye Svairaiva yatnah kartavyaha rogadaviva panditaihi. So he says tasmat. Therefore, meaning he concludes this whole section. Sarva prayatnena, with all efforts, bhavabandha vimuktaye, to get out of the limitations of this samsara. Svairaiva yatnah kartavyaha, one has to put efforts by oneself. Rogadaviva panditaihi, just like the sick person has to put all efforts to get out of that sickness. People can help. They can bring medicine, they can give the right dosage, they can create an environment to rest. People can help, but ultimately it is the person who has to do. So rogadavyo panditaihi. So in the same way, the seeker has to put the efforts to realize the self, uh, and all efforts. Tasmat sarva prayatnena. All efforts one has to put without leaving a stone unturned. One cannot be half-hearted about that. Even for an ordinary disease at the body level, we have to put all efforts. If one has fever, one has to follow the prescription given. One has to follow certain rules also. One cannot eat cold food, one cannot eat ice cream, all that. It will affect the recovery. So in the same way, all out effort has to be made, is what the teacher is guiding the student, that one has to follow what the instruction Shastra gives, what are the do's, what are the don'ts. But this is because one wants to get out of it. Bhavabandha vimuktaye. How intensely one wants to get out of it, that much more effort one will put to come out of it. If the intensity is moderate, then it is very slow. And if the intensity is very dull, it takes a long time. So he says, Sarva Prayatnena Sveraiva Yatna Kartavya. Don't expect somebody else to do, because the bondage is because of ignorance inside. So one's own effort will remove this knowledge, not by anyone else doing anything else for us. Now he comes to the questions. 67th one. Yastvayadyakrita prashnaha variyan chatravanmatihi variyan chastravinmataha sutraprayo nigudharthaha natavyascha mumukshubhihi. So yastu adya krita prashnaha tvaya. Whatever questions you have been raised by you now, prashnaha variyan, they are excellent. 7 questions that he asked, the teacher is praising the questions itself. They are excellent questions. Variyan. Shastravit mataha. They are as per the scriptures. What the scripture tell us, that when we approach a realized master, what should we ask for? The highest that the master can give is the mukti, is the atmagnya. So ask that question. Variyan Shastravit Mata. Then he says Sutra Prayaha. They are explained, they are expressed very briefly. Sutra Praya means like an aphorism, like a sutra, very, very short. But just because it is short doesn't mean it is not powerful. So he says Nigudhartha. It hides in itself something very deep. Nigudha means what is hidden. Nigudhartha, it hides something very deep. Gurudev used to say it's pregnant with lot of ideas and suggestions. So that way, it is very powerful question. Like a simple question, who am I? Is very short. Koham, only 2 words. Who am I? Only 3 words. But the most powerful question, the whole science of subjective science of spirituality is revealed when this question, who am I, is asked. So Sutra Prayo Nigudhartha. Jnatavyascha mumukshubhihi. And it is that which will reveal the knowledge which is desired by those who are mumukshus, who want freedom. They are the people who desire this knowledge. So Jnatavya, it is something which they want to know. They ought to know. Jnatavyascha mumukshubhihi. So these are also some of the qualities of a good student who asks questions. So what kind of questions should one ask? Here is the description of even how to express that question. Shastravin mataha. It is as per the scriptural tradition. So what does it mean here? The idea is that the theme is as per the scriptural uh, tradition. It's not just the question. What is the theme of the Shastra? Is to know the self, is to free us. It is to make us to realize our true nature. That's the main theme of the scripture, the Vedic scriptures. The essence of Vedic scripture is Tattvamasi. So to know that self, the question is in line with that. It's not just the words. It's not that whatever questions are asked in the Upanishad, same question I go and ask the teacher. The question may be put in my own language, in my own words, but the theme is as per the scripture. Shastravin Mataha. Sutra Prayaha is expressed very briefly. See, the questions he asked are Konama Bandha, what is bondage? Kathamesha Agataha, from where it came? Katham Pradishthasya, how is it sustained? Katham Vimoksha, how to be free from it? Ko Asau Anatma, what is Anatma? Paramakka Atma, what is the Supreme Atma? Tayor Viveka Katham, how to discriminate between these two? Very straight, simple, short questions. No beating around the bush. No long, elaborate expressions. That's why in question answer session, Gurudev used to always insist that we must write our questions and give. Because when we start writing, then even that question becomes crystallized in our mind. Sometimes when we speak, some people have that habit, they will not be able to explain exactly what they want. They just go round and round and round, and it takes away a lot of time. Till the speaker has to ask, but what is your question? Are you asking a question or are you giving an opinion? So Sutra Praya, very brief. Sutra is like an aphorism. Like Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Narad Bhakti Sutra. They are aphorisms. They are very, very short. So suppose we give an example. Yogastu Chitta Vritti Nirodhaha. Now yoga is defined as complete silence of the mind. No thoughts. The whole science of yoga in that one sutra. To explain, to get that state, to come to that state of no thoughts, the rest of the sutras are a means. Same way Brahma Sutra also. Janmadhyasya yataha. Like the sutra is that much. The whole creation from where it comes, in which it is sustained, in which it goes back, that pure consciousness is the Ishvara. That is there in our own heart. That is the Atma. Now that entire science of Vedanta is elaborated by that one sutra. Same way here, if you see the 7 questions that the student has asked, they are very short. But the whole Vivek Chudamani is actually an answer over those 7 questions. So Sutra Praya, Nigudhartha, full of hidden import and hidden meaning. Hidden meaning not in the sense of something which is very abstract, which is not comprehensible or having a different double meaning, nothing like that. Hidden Nigudhartha means seemingly it looks very ordinary. Who am I? What are you asking? Who am I? I am such and such person. But it has a hidden meaning that it is asking, no, you are not this. What is your true nature? The deeper meaning of it is hidden by the simplicity of these words. Who am I? What is bondage? So the words seem very simple, but they are very powerful words and they hide a lot of depth. So Sutra Prayo Nigudhartha. Now they should not hide the main purpose or the theme. What they are hiding is the deeper aspect. So the art of expressing the question also is very important. In brief, if one has to ask a question, then it should be asked in such a way that the theme is conveyed, that this is what I want to know. And that theme does not get obstructed. So the teacher understands that theme, the student has understood that theme, and then the discussion happens. So Nigudhartha, Jnatavyascha mumukshubhihi. And this is that which the mumukshu must know. Because the teacher wants to know, the student wants to know. It is not just for some time pass or entertainment or just some intellectual uh, gymnastics. It is what a seeker of freedom really wants to know. Only when that question becomes my question, that I want to know this because I want to be free from this or I want to experience this state. So mumukshu is that person. So the foundation of that question is not some desire for praise, desire for show of intellectual knowledge or testing of the teacher. It is what the student really wants to know because the student wants freedom. So if a person is affected, there is a lot of pain, suppose some disease one has got affected by. What will one ask the doctor? How do I be free from this? These are my symptoms. Now please tell me how can I become free from this? Because one really wants to be free. One doesn't want to ask questions just to understand what the disease is, how does it come, what are the symptoms of it, how to start the treatment. One is not studying as an intellectual exercise. One really wants freedom. There's a big difference between the seeker of freedom asking the same question and somebody who is just wanting intellectual knowledge, some information, asking the question. Because the hunger, that intensity, that drive to liberate oneself, that is most important. The question is only asking, expressing that, the feeling. So when Arjuna is asking Shri Krishna that Shishyasteham Shadhimam Tvam Prapannam, please, I am your disciple, please instruct me. I have become confused about dharma. What should I do? Should I stay and fight or should I go away? I am very confused. Now that question is born out of his delusion there and his confusion there, that he doesn't know. And he is ready to follow instructions. He has surrendered. That bhav is an important aspect in the student. So when one goes to the teacher, as a mumukshu when one goes, then one will ask those kind of questions which will, and as the teacher is giving the answer, one is applying it in the mind. And one goes back, reflects, all that one does. Because the purpose is to be free. Purpose is not anything else. So jnatavyascha mumukshubhihi. With that bhav, one is asked the question. So now as he goes on to elaborate the answer, so first thing that he answers, let us see, 68th one. In this 67th verse, when Gurudev has given this explanation, in the commentary he says that if on a dark night you fall into a wayside well, indeed your condition is unenviable. You are extremely anxious to extricate yourself from the situation. At this moment, you hear approaching footsteps and you cry out for help. The benevolent person reaches the well. Would you then, from the bottom of the well, begin the narration of the entire story of how you came upon the well at that late hour, how you fell, what thoughts kept you company in the sandy bottom of the well, etc. Besides giving him details of your name, details of your family, position, status, etc. No. At such critical moments, you will only cry, I am here in the well, save me. Oh, please save me, help me, save me, save me. Any other cry will be unnatural. Similarly, a student who has understood that in the darkness of ignorance he has fallen into dry well of limitations and sorrows, when he sees the master, he will have no stories to tell, no idle discussions to indulge in. His one heart-rending cry is, "Save me, O Master, save me." This is the bhav, the feeling that I want to be free. So now the student, now the teacher is answering. 68th one. Shunushva vahito vidvan yanmaya samudiryate tadetat shravanat sadhyah bhavabandha vimokshase. He says, Shunushva, listen attentively. Vidvan, O wise person. Yanmaya samudiryate, what I shall tell you now. Tadetat shravanat, by listening to this, sadhya, instantly, bhavabandha vimokshase, you will be free from bondage. Now the 7th question that the student asked, in that the teacher is not going in sequence. He is not saying, okay, first question is ko nama bandha. What is bondage? Kathamesha agata, from where it came. No. He goes straight to the crux. Katham vimoksha, that how do I become free? Because a person who is suffering wants relief first. So he answers that question. The 4th question, Katham vimoksha. So and he gives here the answer, Etat tadetat shravanat sadhya. By listening to this, bhavabandha vimokshase, you will be free from the ocean of samsara. Now, one is he says that one should listen attentively, listen with a lot of carefulness, alertness. Because the Siddhanta in Vedanta is that if the mind is purified, subtle, single-pointed, and ready with those fourfold qualifications, by attentively listening to the teacher who is established in the truth, well-versed in the scriptures, that person realizes immediately. Tadetat shravanat sadhya bhavabandha vimokshase. You will become free. That is one aspect. Second aspect also is that this is the Upanishadic tradition. From the subtlest to the simplest will be the answer. Why? Because the student who is ready will immediately realize. Subtlest will immediately realize. The rest of the elaboration is only for those who are not yet the Uttam Adhikaris. For them, the details are there to reflect and to think and slowly build up the clarity, build up the purity, and then realize the truth. So when he says Sadhyaha, immediately, this is referring to an Uttam Adhikari. And here is a student who is an Uttam Adhikari, who has asked such powerful questions and who has that bhav that I want to be free. So tadetat shravanat sadhya bhavabandha vimokshase. That person will become free instantly. Now listening is a very important aspect even in our daily life. Lot of time is spent in learning how to communicate, speak, public speaking courses, skills, etc. Nowadays, there are courses which will help people to listen. Because a lot of time in our life goes in listening. And that skill we have not cultivated. Also, what we do is partial listening. We listen to what we want to listen. We don't listen to many things that we have to listen to. So we listen based on our attachments and aversions. And this listening is even in a relationship. For harmony in relationships, we have to listen to the other person, identify. It's one of the expressions of love also. That when we love somebody, we want to listen, we pay attention, we want to understand them. Even in a company, a lot of product innovations and the modifications that they make is because they listen to the feedback of the customers. So listening is a very, 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 very important skill. That's why we have 2 ears and only one mouth. That may we listen more and listen with alertness. Hearing is when we listen from one and goes out. We have not paid attention. But listening is with full alertness and attention. So Tulsidas ji says in Ramayana, Bhagwan Ram is giving this knowledge, self-knowledge to to Lakshman ji in the forest, Aranyakand. Ram Gita is a portion where he has asked about Maya, Bhakti, Jnana, Vairagya, all that. And there Bhagwan is giving this knowledge. So before he gives the knowledge, he tells Lakshman ji, Sunahu tat man mati chitlai. That, oh child, listen to this, bringing all these three together. Man, the seat of emotions. Mati, the seat of memory. Mati is the buddhi, and chitta is the memory. Sunahu tat man mati chitlai. So bring all these three together, meaning emotionally be stable. Don't let emotions overwhelm the mind. Intellectually be sharp and alert to grasp the concept because these are subtle ideas. And don't allow memory to trouble. While we are listening, no other distracting thoughts, memories, regrets, anxieties, people, their association with us, nothing else comes to the mind. With single pointedness, one just listens. So there is one interesting video about listening that I just want to share. That how this listening is a very, very important aspect, in our whole life as such. How to improve this listening? There is this very nice video. I just wanted to share. You are able to see and hear, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We are losing our listening. We spend roughly 60% of our communication time listening, but we're not very good at it. We retain just 25% of what we hear. Now, not you, not this talk, but that is generally true. Let's define listening as making meaning from sound. It's a mental process, and it's a process of extraction. We use some pretty cool techniques to do this. One of them is pattern recognition. So in a cocktail party like this, if I say, David, Sarah, pay attention, some of you just sat up. We recognize patterns to distinguish noise from signal, and especially our name. Differencing is another technique we use. If I left this pink noise on for more than a couple of minutes, you would literally cease to hear it. We listen to differences, we discount sounds that remain the same. And then there is a whole range of filters. These filters take us from all sound down to what we pay attention to. Most people are entirely unconscious of these filters, but they actually create our reality in a way because they tell us what we're paying attention to right now. I'll give you one example of that. Intention is very important in sound, in listening. When I married my wife, I promised her that I would listen to her every day as if for the first time. Now that's something I fall short of on a daily basis. But it's a great intention to have in a relationship. But that's not all. Sound places us in space and in time. If you close your eyes right now in this room, you're aware of the size of the room from the reverberation and the bouncing of the sound off the surfaces. And you're aware of how many people are around you because of the micro noises you're receiving. And sound places us in time as well, because sound always has time embedded in it. In fact, I would suggest that our listening is the main way that we experience the flow of time from past to future. So, sonority is time and meaning, a great quote. I said at the beginning, we're losing our listening. Why did I say that? Well, there are a lot of reasons for this. First of all, we invented ways of recording. First writing, then audio recording, and now video recording as well. The premium on accurate and careful listening has simply disappeared. Secondly, the world is now so noisy, with this cacophony going on visually and auditorily, it's just hard to listen. It's tiring to listen. Many people take refuge in headphones, but they turn big public spaces like this, shared soundscapes, into millions of tiny little personal sound bubbles. In this scenario, nobody's listening to anybody. We're becoming impatient. We don't want oratory anymore, we want sound bites. And the art of conversation is being replaced, dangerously, I think, by personal broadcasting. I don't know how much listening there is in this conversation, which is sadly very common, especially in the UK. We're becoming desensitized. Our media have to scream at us with these kind of headlines in order to get our attention. And that means it's harder for us to pay attention to the quiet, the subtle, the understated. This is a serious problem that we're losing our listening. This is not trivial, because listening is our access to understanding. Conscious listening always creates understanding, and only without conscious listening can these things happen. A world where we don't listen to each other at all is a very scary place indeed. So I'd like to share with you 5 simple exercises, tools you can take away with you to improve your own conscious listening. Would you like that? Yes. Good. The first one is silence. Just 3 minutes a day of silence is a wonderful exercise to reset your ears and to recalibrate so that you can hear the quiet again. If you can't get absolute silence, go for quiet. That's absolutely fine. Second, I call this the mixer. So even if you're in a noisy environment like this, and we all spend a lot of time in places like this, listen in the coffee bar to how many channels of sound can I hear? How many individual channels in that mix am I listening to? You can do it in a beautiful place as well, like a lake. How many birds am I hearing? Where are they? Where are those ripples? It's a great exercise for improving the quality of your listening. Third, this exercise I call savoring, and this is a beautiful exercise. It's about enjoying mundane sounds. This, for example, is my tumble dryer. It's a waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I love it. Or just try this one on for size. So mundane sounds can be really interesting if you pay attention. I call that the hidden choir. It's around us all the time. The next exercise is probably the most important of all of these. If you just take one thing away, this is listening positions. The idea that you can move your listening position to what's appropriate to what you're listening to. This is playing with those filters. You remember I gave you those filters at the beginning? It's starting to play with them as levers, to get conscious about them and to move to different places. These are just some of the listening positions or scales of listening positions that you can use. There are many. Have fun with that. It's very exciting. And finally, an acronym. You can use this in listening, in communication. If you're in any one of those roles, and I think that probably is everybody who's listening to this talk. The acronym is RASA, which is the Sanskrit word for juice or essence. And rasa stands for receive, which means pay attention to the person, appreciate, making little noises like, oh, okay. Summarize, the word so is very important in communication, and ask questions afterwards. Now, sound is my passion, it's my life. I wrote a whole book about it, so I live to listen. That's too much to ask for most people. But I believe that every human being needs to listen consciously in order to live fully. Connected in space and in time to the physical world around us, connected in understanding to each other, not to mention spiritually connected, because every spiritual path I know of has listening and contemplation at its heart. That's why we need to teach listening in our schools as a skill. Why is it not taught? It's crazy. And if we can teach listening in our schools, we can take our listening off that slippery slope to that dangerous, scary world that I talked about and move it to a place where everybody is consciously listening all the time, or at least capable of doing it. Now, I don't know how to do that, but this is TED. And I think the TED community is capable of anything. So I invite you to connect with me, connect with each other, take this mission out, and let's get listening taught in schools and transform the world in one generation to a conscious listening world, a world of connection, a world of understanding, and a world of peace. Thank you for listening to me today.
So that was about listening. And so see how the teachers here also say the same thing, that how the human mind listens, and so much of filtering happens in that listening. In our scripture it says, Bhadram karnebhi shrunuyama, may we listen to the auspicious. So a few techniques that he spoke about: silence. The scriptures speak about maun, and apply maun as a sadhana. Then the scriptures speak about listening with single pointed attention. So many sounds which are there, to be able to discriminate and distinguish, oh, this is this sound, this is this sound, this is this sound. That helps the listening. Different techniques even our Shastra gives of how to listen and improve the quality of one's own listening. Intention, again he spoke about intention, which just now the shloka spoke about, that Jnatavyascha mumukshubhihi. So beautiful points about how to enhance the listening, become more sensitive in listening. So now the student, when the teacher has said this, that please listen what I'm going to say, and when you hear it, the result will be you will become free from this bondage. There is a small document on this listening that I will just share with you. When I finish the talk, I will put it on the drive so that you can go through the document, and it can help to improve our quality of our listening. So when the student is ready, the teacher is now wanting to give the knowledge, and the first question that he takes is how to be free from this bondage, because that's the intensity of the student. The teacher has grasped that. That's the beauty of the teacher also. The teacher is not going by just the order of the questions. He has understood the intention behind the question is the student wants to be free. So the 69th verse, he starts answering that question, that Katham Vimoksha, how to be free. So he says, Mokshasya hetu prathamo nigadyate vairagyamatyantamanitya vastushu tatashamaschapidamasthi tiksha nyasa prasakta khila karmanam bhrisham. So now he says, what will help one to liberate oneself? So first thing he says, Mokshasya hetuhu prathamo nigadyate. So he is going to elaborate first the cause of moksha. So first he says, Vairagyam atyantam anitya vastushu. That vairagya is very, very crucial. See, earlier the scripture has already given us the fourfold qualification. That is for us to understand that a student endowed with this fourfold qualification has gone to the teacher. And the question is asked by the student. Now when he has gone to the teacher is giving him this. So it may seem like a repetition. But we should also remember that the teacher may be sitting with many other students there. And so the teacher may be giving this as an answer to this particular student to confirm, as well as for many others to even know. So he says, Vairagyam Atyantam, supreme dispassion towards all the objects of the world, Anitya Vastushu. Why supreme dispassion? He says the first important requirement is one must have supreme dispassion, because the mind then only can turn within and contemplate steadily. Till then, the mind will not be able to contemplate steadily, and the mind will keep getting tempted and bound. So he says, Vairagyam Atyantam Anitya Vastushu. Then he says, Tata Shamas Chapi Damas Titiksha. Then are those sixfold qualifications. Now, Vivek alone will lead to this supreme dispassion. So when he says dispassion, it includes discrimination. And earlier we already saw that the student wants to become free, mumukshubhihi. So only two qualifications are mentioned here, Vairagya and Shama Dama Titiksha, which is basically Shatka Sampatti, because the other two are inherent. So in that sense, by implication, all the four are there. And based on this, he says, Nyasa Prasakta Akhila Karmanam Vrisham. One must renounce Vrisham completely. What? Prasakta Akhila Karmanam. All the attachment to actions, specifically selfish actions, which only think about I, me, and mine. So all those actions which are meant only for my enjoyment or for my self-glorification or for even the duties, in fact, till I have a mind which is not having this Vairagya, which is not having this Shatka Sampatti, Mumukshutvam, etc., I have to do the duties. And those duties have to be dedicated to the Lord. So Karma Yoga. So through Karma Yoga, I purify the mind. But when the mind is purified, then I have to do Karma Sannyas. Meaning I have to drop those duties, the individualistic thinking, and I have to change the nature of action from the worldly things to exclusive listening, reflection, contemplation. That is called Karma Sannyas. Karma Sannyas does not mean leave all actions and just sit, become idle. No. Having used action to cultivate Vairagya, to cultivate Bhakti. So if my Grahastha life, I do my actions, my duties, responsibilities, dedicating them to the Lord, dedicating it to the well-being of the family, where my ego has become lesser, my devotion and surrender to the Lord has become more intense. Vairagya from sense objects I have developed because I've seen enough of all those. And I know they will only give temporary happiness. Now, I have used the Grahastha life or my actions as an individual to cultivate dispassion, devotion, discrimination. Now, those actions have to be left. That is called Nyasa. Nyasa means to drop. And drop very well. Vrisham, completely. Very well one has to drop. Meaning not to pick up again. Just like we will now no more go back to the nursery class and sit there, because we have completely got the essence of it and we have risen above it. No more the mind will be tempted to go back there. In the same way, one has developed Atyanta Vairagya. One has seen enough of the worldly pleasure, power, position, prestige, popularity, all these. One has dropped it. And what is one doing? Not sitting idle. One has developed dispassion, devotion to exclusively focus on the spiritual path. Go to the teacher, serve the teacher, listen to the teacher, reflect, meditate, spend the time in doing this. So, Nyasa Prasakta Akhila Karmanam Vrisham. So, Akhila Karma, all those actions which are meant to strengthen the individual as the ego, all those are given up. And all those actions which will reduce this identification with the body, they are taken up. So he says that is the means. So develop Vairagya, develop Shatka Sampatti, Mumukshutvam, and then drop all the actions. What to do if I drop all these actions? When we are saying that listening, reflection, etc. has to be done. That is what he says in the next verse. Tata shrutistan mananam satatva dhyanam chiram nitya nirantaram munehe tato vikalpam parametya vidwan ihaiva nirvana sukham samrichhati. So he says, having dropped all those selfish actions, because one has risen above it, one has done those with the attitude of dedication to the Lord, that is called yajna bhavana. One has purified the mind through yajna, dana, tapa. Now one has cultivated the fourfold qualifications. Come to the teacher, then what should one do? Tata shruti. Shruti means here listening. Then listen, pay full attention and listen to the Vedantic scriptures. Mananam, reflect upon it. Determine that the essence is Shravanam. That what is the essence of this Vedantic knowledge? That I am Brahman, world is an illusion. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. That's the essence. Then reflect upon that. Okay, why is it so? Use scriptural logic. Use the guidance given by the teacher. Examples, analogies, all that which the scripture gives. Mananam. Then Dhyanam Chiram. For a long time one has to do contemplation. Why? Because there is a Viparita Bhavana. There is a feeling that I am this body. So even if intellectually I know I am Brahman, but the feeling that I am this body doesn't go. How will that go? Only through steady contemplation for a long time. Chiram. The long time is only to remove the conditioning which we have accumulated over a long period of time. Over millions of births, we have accumulated this feeling that I am this jiva, I am this body. That has to go. Hence, with a lot of intensity, one has to contemplate, and it may take time. So it is chiram. For longer time, dhyanam chiram, nitya nirantaram, constantly, as much as one can, nitya, all the time, unbroken, nirantara. But the mind is not wandering anywhere else. Steadily one is saying Shivoham, 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 Shivoham. And that mind is tuned to that state that I am not this body, I am that pure consciousness. That Nitya Nirantaram Munehe. Tato Avikalpam Parametya. Then what will happen to this person? The person will experience the state of Avikalpa. Vikalpa means thought. Avikalpa means no thought. Meaning that person will be absorbed in the self. One would have transcended this mind and intellect. Parametya Vidwan. Ihaiva Nirvana Sukham Samrichhati. Here itself the person experiences freedom. So the state of Samadhi, Avikalpa is equal to Nirvikalpa here. One will experience the state of Samadhi. And through that state of Samadhi, that person has become free right here and now. Samadhi not just as an experience, but Samadhi as the abidance in the self. Sama means equanimous, which is the self. Dhi means the buddhi. So the buddhi has lost the sense of identification with the body and is absorbed in the self, transcending itself. That final abidance in the self is Samadhi. So the whole path in Vedanta is given very clearly that how should one progress in life, especially in this path of Vedanta. How does one progress? Step by step, the 10 steps of sadhana in Vedanta, they are from selfish actions to karma yoga, then upasana, then approach a teacher, then Brahma Jignasa, ask the questions to the teacher to realize the self, then Shravan, Manan, Nididhyasan, Savikalpa Samadhi, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and the constant practice of Nirvikalpa Samadhi leads to final abidance in the self. These are the steps to realize the self. These 10 steps also I will put in the Google Drive as a document so that one can just make a note of that. This is the path of Vedanta. See, every path has its own steps. Bhakti has its own steps, Navadha Bhakti. Yoga has its own steps, Ashtanga Yoga. Karma Yoga also has its own steps. So each path has its own steps, and this is what Vivek Chudamani is saying is according to the path of Vedanta. So in two verses, the teacher has actually given the answer to the fourth question, which is Katham Vimoksha. So it's good to actually write down those 7 questions and write down the appropriate verses in front of them. This is the answer for this question. So that's how when we study, because a lot of other ideas are also associated and given along with this. So exact answer we have to know. So the exact answer for that fourth question is verse number 69 and 70. That how will one become free? Now, if a student is really an adhikari, that student will immediately realize, as it was said earlier. If the student is not an adhikari, the student will know, okay, this is the path. This is what has to be done to be free. So that the complete picture is clear to the student, that this is the path. Now the other questions, when they are answered, the student has the sufficient material then.
थोड़ा सा बना एक टाइम खाने देता अभी नाश्ते के लिए.
The student has sufficient material for discriminating, contemplating, reflecting, all that. So these two are the answers. Now he says, what is he going to say next? Fourth question he answered. Then he takes up the 7th question. So he says, 71st one, Yad bodhavyam tavedanim atman atma vivechanam taduchyate maya samyak shrutvatmanyavadharaya. He says, Yad bodhavyam, what you should know, tava idanim, that I will tell you now. What? Atma anatma vivechanam. The 7th question. Kosavan atma, paramakka atma, tayor viveka katham etad uchyatam. That's the last question, 7th one. So he says that I am going to tell you now, because bondage is based on that. That identification with the anatma is bondage. Now what is anatma? He has already asked. Kosavan atma, paramakka atma, tayor viveka katham. So while he is doing this discrimination, he is explaining actually both. The question number 7, which is how to discriminate, and question number 5, that what is this anatma? Taduchyate maya samyak. Now I am going to elaborate that. Shrutva atmani avadharaya. Listen to it and grasp it. So the next section onwards now, the anatma description will start. That what is the anatma? Today that anatma is what I think is me. So here that will start off from tomorrow. We will take that up. Somebody has raised their hand here. What is the question? I can't see the name here. The name shows 1 + 6. The name of the phone is 1 + 6. Okay, if anybody else has anything to ask, share, welcome to.
Swamiji, I was saying that 1 + 6 is listening of video of that listening thing. What's the name? Like you want to listen again.
Sorry?
The clip is from where? The clip of listening what you have shown is from where?
That person's name is Julian Treasure. I will put it on the drive anyway, so you can listen from there.
Okay, thank you.
Namaste, Swamiji.
Yes, Hari Om.
Referring to verse 69 and 70, 69, is it essentially saying that the first thing that you have to do is sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, and then 70 says jnana yoga? Is that how it is?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति 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 हरिः ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम।